Bonjour à tous. Hello, everyone. This morning, we got the news that Health Canada has completed their review of the Moderna vaccine and found it to be safe and effective. Canada has an internationally recognized process of independent review, and I know that our best experts have upheld this highest standard. Now that Health Canada has approved the Moderna vaccine, we have the green light to start rolling it out across the country. The first doses of our guaranteed 40 million dose order from Moderna will arrive in the coming days. Santé Canada a passé en revue.
Health Canada has reviewed the Moderna vaccine and found that it is safe and effective. Canada has an independent review process that is globally recognized, and I know that our best experts have upheld the highest standards in this regard. Now that Health Canada has approved the Moderna vaccine, we have the green light to start rolling it out across the country. The first doses of our guaranteed 40 million dose order from Moderna will arrive in the coming days. Later today, I will be speaking with Dr. Athayan from Moderna, McGill grad, regarding the deliveries and efforts to vaccinate Canadians as quickly as possible.
Today, I also have some more good news to share. I can announce that we will be receiving an additional 250,000 doses from Pfizer next month. That takes us up to a total of almost 700 doses we've already received, and the shipments now scheduled. We're on track to have at least 1.2 million doses from both Pfizer and Moderna delivered by January 31st. Nous avons commencé à vacciner les
We've begun vaccinating the most vulnerable Canadians and frontline workers. Already, these vaccines will allow us to save lives. And while we are working to distribute vaccines as quickly as possible, we are continuing to do everything in our power to ensure people's safety. Our government has agreed to continue to provide federal support to the Canadian Red Cross in Quebec. 500 people that have been deployed in the long-term care homes there will remain until at least March 31st. On that date, Quebec should be in a position to fully take over the management of the long-term care homes in Quebec and regain control of the situation.
Top priority is keeping Canadians safe. As cases keep rising, we will continue to be there for communities that need additional targeted support. We've now extended the Canadian Red Cross deployment for long-term care homes in Quebec. Just last week, our government also committed to additional civilian support for Red Sucker Lake in Manitoba and a Canadian Armed Forces deployment to Attawapiskat First Nation in Ontario to support elders and vulnerable community members. This is in addition to the requests we approved for the Red Cross in long-term care homes in Ontario and for isolation sites in Windsor, Essex. The Red Cross has done outstanding work over the last year to keep people safe. As we deal with this second wave, we need their expertise more than ever. That's why today I can announce that we are investing an additional $70 million to support their work. Half of this funding will go towards the Red Cross COVID-19 testing assistance response teams, which support communities on testing capacity. The other half of the funding is for the Red Cross outbreak crisis management teams, which help with everything from isolation sites to mental health services. To everyone helping on the ground, whether you're with the Canadian Red Cross or you serve in the Canadian Armed Forces, you're doing remarkable work. Whenever we need you, you're there to help during floods, wildfires, and now COVID-19. You consistently step up, step towards trouble, step towards danger to keep your fellow Canadians safe. Thank you for everything you're doing. I know many members of the Canadian Armed Forces are apart from family right now, serving at home and around the world to protect us. So thank you for everything you do, and a special thank you to your families and kids who might miss you an awful lot this Christmas. We're thinking of you.
For all our men and women in uniform, thank you. You do excellent incredible work, and thank you also to your families who support you in this service. In this regard, today, I can announce that we will be appointing a new Chief of the Defence Staff, Vice Admiral Art MacDonald, who is currently the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, will take on this role as General Jonathan Vance retires from the Armed Forces. Vice Admiral MacDonald has decades of experience and service. He's played a leadership role in a number of fields, having led humanitarian operations and disaster recovery operations, as well as leading the command of an extreme Arctic multinational operational group. I know he will continue to provide solid leadership for the Canadian Armed Forces and defend the values of Canadians the world over. General Vance now has the record for being the longest serving Chief of the Defence Staff, and I would like to thank him for his years of service and leadership. General Vance has led the Canadian Armed Forces to defend our country from military threat and to protect Canadians on our territory when we were dealing with natural disasters and more specifically with COVID-19.
I can announce that we will be appointing a new Chief of Defence Staff. Vice Admiral Art MacDonald, who is currently the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, will take on this role as General Jonathan Vance retires from the Armed Forces. I want to thank General Vance for his service, including as the longest-serving Chief of Defence Staff. General Vance has led the Canadian Armed Forces as they defended our country against military threats, deployed overseas, and protected Canadians at home from everything from floods to now COVID-19. Thank you, General Vance, for your service and your leadership. In his new role as Chief, Vice Admiral MacDonald will oversee the work of the Canadian Armed Forces, including on vaccine rollout through Operation Vector. The Canadian Armed Forces have been part of the national response to this pandemic since the spring, whether deployed to long-term care homes or helping with contact tracing. I know that Vice Admiral MacDonald's leadership and expertise will be invaluable as the armed forces continue to work around the clock to keep Canadians safe. This afternoon, I also want to say a few words about traveling and the holidays. Let's be clear, this is not the time for a vacation abroad. Even if you travel every winter, please rethink your plans. In many parts of the country, hospitals are already struggling to cope with new cases. There are new strains of this disease in places like the United Kingdom. The situation is very serious. By staying home, by following public health rules, you can be part of the solution. Canada continues to have significant travel and border measures in place for anyone entering the country. Unlike most of our allies, we have a mandatory 2-week quarantine, including for Canadians returning to the country. In March, we brought in these measures, which continue to be some of the strongest in the world, to keep people safe and save lives. Today, just like on day one, protecting you and your family is our top priority. That's why, in addition to the significant measures we already have in place, we acted quickly on additional travel restrictions in response to Canada. Today, I can announce that we will extend this temporary suspension of passenger flights from the UK to Canada for another 2 weeks until January 6th, so we can prevent this new variant of COVID-19 from spreading in Canada. If you've arrived from the UK recently, the Government of Canada has been in the process of reaching out with more directions.
I'd like to remind everyone that you should not travel abroad at this point. Airports should not be busy. If you have reserved a trip, think about it. Even if you've traveled abroad every year, circumstances are very different this year. And if you do still decide to travel, upon your return, you have to quarantine for 14 days. If you don't respect this rule, there could be serious consequences. Our priority is
I think of everyone who can't be with family or lost someone they loved. It's been less than a year since Ukrainian Airlines Flight 752 was shot down, killing all those on board, and less than 2 years since the crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. To the families and friends who will be spending the holidays without a loved one, you will be in our thoughts. In honor of the victims, we are working to establish January 8th of every year as the National Day of Remembrance for victims of air disasters. Their memories and their stories will not be forgotten. And to everyone who's lost someone this year to this terrible virus, I want to extend to you my deepest condolences. We are standing with you. We are grieving with you. You are not alone. En 2020,
in 2020, we have had to deal with too many tragedies. This was not how we wanted to be spending the year, and even less so Christmas. Days are shorter, there's less sunshine. As Canadians, we know what it is, what it means to get through a long and cold winter. So do what you need to do. Stay home. Protect your loved ones, our frontline workers. Our workers are in the health sector, doctors and nurses.
stick together when times get tough. It's just what we do. We can't afford to let up now, so keep doing your part. This is not the time for Christmas or New Year's parties. This is the time to continue wearing a mask, to keep your distance, to avoid gatherings, and to download and use the COVID Alert app. In other words, please continue to protect those around you. Our country has been through difficult Christmases before. There have been times when our grandparents or parents couldn't be with family or had to put traditions on hold. They had faith that better days would come round. Now this Christmas, it's our turn. It's up to us to protect each other. It's up to us to pull together, to hold on, and to know, however dark the winter may be, spring is coming. Better days.
Wish you happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Everyone, and happy holidays. Stay safe, stay well, and together we'll get through this. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. On va commencer la période.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll start over the phone. One question, one follow-up.
Opératrice, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Our first question is from Kate Bolongaro from Bloomberg News. Please go ahead, à vous la parole.
Hello, Prime Minister. Good afternoon. Happy early birthday to you as well, and thanks for taking our questions today. I have a question for you regarding President Biden. Since he is trying to make the U.S. a leader on climate change, does this pose any challenges for a lumber, mineral, and fossil fuel-producing country like Canada?
Oh, I think it is great news that President-elect Biden is focused on fighting climate change. Over the past 5 years, Canada has taken significant steps on fighting against climate change, whether it's putting a price on pollution right across the country, which we've announced will be continuing to increase, whether it's supporting families by returning money to hardworking families who deserve extra support, or by protecting our coastlines or our natural territories. At the same time as we move forward to reduce the amount of carbon emissions in our energy producing sectors. We will work closely with the American government on moving forward in ways that both protect jobs, create new ones, and fight climate change. And I'm looking forward to having alignment in North America on that particular challenge the world is facing.
Following up, Kate?
And your government recently rejected a Chinese takeover of an Arctic gold mine company this week. Can you explain to us why that was the case, and are you worried about retaliation from Beijing?
We make decisions on investments in Canada based on recommendations by our security experts. There are many factors that are taken into account on that, but I won't be.
Please go ahead, à vous la parole.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thank you so much for taking our questions today. Home in the Greater Toronto area. I'm wondering how you explain to them that the same crisis that happened in the first wave of COVID-19 is happening again in the second wave?
Our job as a federal government is to be there to support Canadians right across the country, and that's what we've done. We've had people's backs with extra supports, but we've also had our people's backs by giving provinces extra support so they can take care of the things within their jurisdictions. Whether it has been directly with the Canadian Armed Forces or with the Red Cross, whether it has been indirectly by transfers of billions of dollars to the provinces, including with money directed towards protecting the most vulnerable, like those in long-term care homes with our Safe Restart Agreement. We will continue to work with the provinces to support them in the work they need to do. We will always respect provincial jurisdictions, but we are also always there to lend a hand whenever anyone asks.
Following up, Marika?
It seems though like the help that has been offered has not been enough. There's one home now where 26 residents have died. 75% of them are positive with COVID-19. Is the federal government looking at deploying the Canadian Armed Forces against these long-term care homes? And if not, why not?
Deployments of the Canadian Armed Forces or of the Red Cross is always done at the request of the provinces in question. We have worked extremely closely with the provincial health authorities, with public health, and with everyone right across the country, continually offered our support, offered whatever resources are necessary. This is what we've done since the very beginning. Like I said, we respect provincial jurisdictions over long-term care homes, but we will always be there to help on whatever requests are made of us.
Thank you. Operator, one last question on the phone.
Last question is de Hélène Buzetti.
Hélène Buzetti, Le Devoir. You have the floor. Yes. Hello, Mr. Trudeau. Earlier on, you were referring to people who are traveling, keep leaving the country and going down south. You're saying not to do so. Have you considered prohibiting it completely by suspending Section 6 of the Charter, or a decree or an order of some sort? Answer: we already have very strong measures in place with respect to the quarantine that has worked relatively well for months now. We are indeed concerned by the number of people who are considering going down south, for instance, and that is why we are saying not to do so. Choose to stay home. Stay in Canada over Christmas, and that's the best thing you could do if you're family, for our frontline workers. Of course, we are working with the provinces and territories on additional measures, but already the country has been extremely effective from the start, and it's a measure that is much more stringent than the measures taken by our allies throughout the world. Follow-up question. From what I gather, you're not trying to prohibit people from leaving. At the same time, premiers from Ontario and Quebec are asking for a mandatory test upon people's return to the country, and even some supervised quarantines in motels, etc., as what had happened for some arrivals last time around. Answer: as to the mandatory quarantine, there already are very rigorous measures in place. The Canadian Border Services Agency verifies the quarantine plan for every traveler returning to the country. There are regular follow-ups. The local police, local authorities also are overseeing this quarantine phase, and there are some significant, serious repercussions for people who don't respect this. And in the case of, for instance, there are specific cases of rapid testing in places like Alberta, where they do rapid testing at the Calgary airport. And we are currently having discussions with people in Ontario and Quebec to bring in similar measures if they're interested in them.
Over the past many months, working with the province of Alberta on a testing pilot on the arrivals at the Calgary International Airport, where there is rapid testing immediately of arrivals there. We have worked with the province of Ontario over the past many weeks towards a similar program in Ontario and have been talking over the past days with the Quebec government as well on looking at bringing in rapid testing protocols for arrivals at major international airports in Canada.
Merci. On va maintenant passer aux questions sur place.
Questions in the room or outside?
Stephanie Lewis, the Canadian Press. Thanks for taking our questions. Transmission of the virus has always been highest in workplaces that can't close. And it seems as though, although the government has provided numerous benefits to encourage people to stay home when they're sick, they're not. They're afraid of losing their jobs. I wonder at what point can the federal government do more to ensure corporations are doing their part to actively protect their employees?
The federal government made the decision early on to send supports to businesses, to workers, to families, to make sure that people could do the right thing. And we've seen millions of Canadians across the country make those right choices as we crushed that first wave in June. And as we're trying to stabilize the second wave as it's hitting us through this winter. We know all Canadians are trying to do their part, and we salute the efforts of businesses, corporations, and others who have reflected in their daily practices on allowing people to work from home, on adjusting ways. As we've said, when the provinces mandate shutdowns or extra public health measures, the federal government has stepped up with more our approach as we implore Canadians to continue to do the right thing and keep each other safe.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. Given the severity of the pandemic and the military's role in supporting other government departments, is it wise to be changing the top military commander during the second wave of COVID-19?
The Canadian Armed Forces is an extraordinary institution that has demonstrated its ability to be there to protect Canadians and to save Canadians in difficulty over decades and indeed generations. I am extremely pleased of the work that the military has done throughout this pandemic, whether it's been in long-term care homes or acting now in distributing the vaccines. And throughout, the leadership of the military has demonstrated its efficiency and ability to serve Canadians. I thank General Vance, who is now the longest-serving Chief of Defence Staff in Canadian history, and welcome the extraordinary leadership of Vice Admiral Art MacDonald, who will be keeping Canadians safe.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Madeleine Blais-Morin.
Radio Canada has a question. Regarding trips abroad, you say that quarantine is effective and it's more stringent than in other countries. If you are advising Canadians against travel, is it to protect them or is it to protect us here in Canada? And also, you didn't comment in French on the extension of the suspension of travel or flights. Do you seek to find more information in this regard regarding that variant, or what is your approach? Answer. This government's priority has always been and will always be to protect Canadians. And one of the best ways to do so is to prevent people arriving from abroad and spreading COVID-19. That is why we have quarantine measures in place. Yes, it protects them, but it mostly also protects the broader community from transmission from abroad. And as I've said, it's been very effective over the last months, and it will continue to be so. That said, it's even better and safer not to travel at all and not to have to come back to the country and have a quarantine. That's why we urge everyone to stay in the country over Christmas. Now, as to the UK, we are closely monitoring what's happening with this new variant of COVID-19. 2 more weeks now where flights are not allowed to land from between Canada and the UK, and that's something that we are doing to protect us. We are analyzing this new variant and continuing to work on that with our allies to make sure that all of the decisions we are making are the right ones to make sure Canadians stay safe.
In English, please.
I repeated it in the speech.
Okay.
It was in the speech.
Hi, Hi, Prime Minister. Mackenzie Gray with CTV. Today, the U.S. Announced that they're buying 100 million additional doses of the Pfizer vaccine, but previously the company had said that they were looking to sell those same doses to other countries. So why did the Canadian government not step in and buy those extra doses of the vaccine before the U.S. did?
We've been working since this summer on procuring vaccines for Canadians. We knew that the best way through and out of this pandemic was going to be with vaccines. So we set out and built one of the best range of potential vaccines of any country in the world, with 7 solid contracts with potential vaccine makers for more potential doses per Canadian than just about any other country in the world. On top of that, we've already seen vaccinations start, as Canada was among the first handful of countries in the world to deliver vaccines to its citizens. And we will continue, as I've announced today, to look to increase the number of doses delivered to Canadians. We know that this pandemic doesn't start to end until we have vaccination of millions and millions of people, which is why we're continuing to ensure that everything is done safely and responsibly to make those vaccines available as quickly as possible. And we all look forward to things being much better in the spring.
Prime Minister Michael Couture, Global National. I wanted to ask you what your message is to people who have gone through this entire lockdown and feel like they've done their part. And just before lockdowns happen in Ontario and Quebec, that maybe they deserve a break and maybe they deserve to have a good time over Christmas with family, especially in Ontario, but the numbers continue to go up. So what do you say to them that they think that they can get together with family, especially because, hey, I know them, I know where they've been. What do you say to those people?
All the sacrifices that Canadians have been making over the past many months, birthdays and anniversaries that have gone uncelebrated, funerals over Zoom as people have lost loved ones, weddings postponed, sacrifices people have made in terms of friends and gatherings that we haven't been able to do. Canadians have been good about that. The vast majority of people have been doing their part and following the rules. This virus means that if we loosen up before time, all of those sacrifices could have been for nothing. We held on through what has been a very difficult year. And we now see the end in sight with vaccines coming and vaccines being there for the most vulnerable and increasingly over the coming months for all Canadians. That means we're almost there, but we're not there yet. And if people don't follow public health rules now, we could be in for an even more difficult winter than we're already going to have. So as always, we are asking people to do the right thing. Take time for your closest loved ones. You know, Christmas is a holiday of celebration for so many Canadians, where it's classic that we go to alls and we're seeing all sorts of friends at different moments throughout the holidays. Well, that's not what this Christmas is going to be. And just like this year, we will be drawn back to a small group of those closest to us that we've been in lockdown with over the past many months. So for many people, like my family, we're going to be focusing on those people closest to us. A lot of times with those small handful of loved ones that we are most there for and most keen on protecting. That's what Christmas is going to look like for all of us, and we're certainly leaning in on being with each other. And I know most Canadians are going to do that as well, because we know that that's the right thing to do. That's the right way to get through this. So as difficult as it will be, let us find the joy, let us find the celebration, and let's make sure we're reaching out to friends and far-off family through the miracles of technology that allow us to do that. Reach out over Zoom, reach out over the phone to make sure that people know we're thinking of them. And part of our love for them and thinking of them is not showing up to give them a hug this Christmas. Je pense que depuis les
In English, I think from the beginning of this year, Canadians have sacrificed a lot, birthday celebrations that have been missed. They've held funerals and weddings where people haven't been able to get together, celebrate, cry together. People did the right thing for the last 10 months now. And here we are, and we can almost see the light at the end of the tunnel. And with these vaccines, we will be able to put this pandemic behind us in 2021. We certainly hope so. And that's very much the reason why now is not the time to give up or to loosen up. If we loosen up now, then all of these sacrifices, everything we've done over the last many months could be in vain. We owe it to ourselves to hold on for another few months to get through this tough winter, but it won't be as tough as if people just give up on the measures that protect us all, that protect our frontline workers. You know, holidays are times to see friends, to have office parties, to visit the neighbors, to share, to exchange, to share gifts, to buy gifts in super busy shopping centers. That's generally how things work over the holidays, except this year. This year, we need to stay with our very closest loved ones, really take the time to truly appreciate those we love the most in the world. In other words, a small, tiny group of people, and that will be tough. It will be extremely important to be there, to show our love to our parents, our grandparents, our friends nearby and far, not by going to see them, but by showing them that we love them by not going to see them. So through technology, because if we can hold strong now over this holiday season, then next year will be much better. Next summer, next Christmas will be much better than this year. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. That is the end of today's press conference. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone.